Welcome back to the Van Andrew Variety Hour. The only show. So, I'm old. Not actually, like I'm not old in reality. I'm old by internet standards, and by internet time. So old, in fact, that I have played every single Pokemon game on release. Maybe not Red and Blue, I was 3 when those came out. A bit of discourse that I've always found very entertaining and very funny to me is the Gen 1 discourse. And you know what I'm talking about, the concept that Gen 1 is the best generation of Pokemon. This has been revived a little bit in Gens 3 and 4, and a little bit of 5 now as well. I'm seeing that starting to crop up. But I think what everyone who is in the midst of these arguments and debating on their side of which generation is the best is forgetting one simple fact. Every single generation has sucked a little bit. Now, that little bit has grown tremendously over the past few years, but all of the generations have been held together with sticks and berries. It is not something that everybody could just look at and go, wow, I really love every single Pokemon in this generation. The games are really good. They work properly like they're supposed to. That doesn't happen. I don't think that's happened in any generation ever. So I've decided to take it upon myself to rank the 3 worst Pokemon in every single generation. I would like to clarify, though, I don't just mean worst as in, like, I don't like them. I mean, I've got 3 different categories for each particular variety of worst. Whichever one you consider worse, you can take as the worst Pokemon of that generation. At least as far as I'm concerned. And as we all know, my opinion is the only one that matters. Our 3 categories are going to be worst designed. Worst designed simply means it looks like crap. It just looks bad. Whether it's oversimple or overcomplicated, a bad design is a bad design. Number 2. Bad gameplay. Now, this one has a couple of different caveats to it, because of course we're talking stats, move pool, typing, but I also want a little bit of an extra sprinkle on top, which is gameplay versus game fantasy. And what I mean is, do the stats and do the Pokedex entries match the Pokemon? And lastly, most forgettable. What Pokemon do you forget exists? You can't think of it, can you? That's the key. That's the factor. That's what I'm looking for here. We're not including legendaries, we're not including mythics, and we're not going to include shinies either. Main reason is because I don't feel like it. We're going by based on when they were introduced. When they were within their generation, they fit these categories. They may have since received support, they may have since received evolutions, they may have since received Mega Evolutions or Gigantamax forms, but they didn't have them at this point. Now that may seem unfair, but it's my list and I can do what I want. We're going to count sequentially by generation, so we're going to start with Gen 1, go all the way through to Gen 9, and I'm also going to split this up into 3 parts, mostly because I'm very, very tired. I'll probably black out if I sit here for 2 hours talking about Pokemon. Might lose oxygen or something. Who knows? Before we begin, please subscribe. I love you very much. If you do disagree with me, please put it in the comments below. And if you have a better pick for each category, let me know. I'll consider it. Hell, if I get enough of them, I may do a viewer ranking. Gen 1, the 151 Pokemon. Not a bad one amongst them. The original 151, I couldn't tell you how I knew about. Maybe the anime did it. The point is that Pokemon has existed in my life since literally before I can remember. But you know who hasn't? You know who's the worst fucking looking Pokemon I've ever seen in all of Gen 1? You know who the worst is? It's not Mr. Mime. It's not Jinx either. Those are both very good options, but the human-like Pokemon don't really bother me all that much, especially the psychic ones. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's some that are just like animals, like Rattata. It's not them, though. I understand the appeal of those, especially at this point in the franchise, when they weren't really sure if it was going to be based in reality or fantasy. More in reality or fantasy. I'm rambling a bit. I say all of that to tell you, Seaking is the worst. And I don't mean the Sugar Daddy website. Seaking is just a fish. And it's not even like a good fish either. It's like an ugly fucking goldfish that you would win at a fair with a horn put on it. That's it. That is the entirety of what Seaking is. Its vacant eyes look like it's either seen too much or knows too little, and I'm not really sure which it is, on top of the fact that it just, I feel like it would stink, you know? There's a very good reason Misty never once evolved her Goldeen over the course of the show. If I wanted an ugly fish to fight other people's animals, I'd go and buy a piranha. I don't need Sea King for any reason. Oh, worst gameplay for Gen 1 is rough. That's a hard one to choose from. Gen 1 suffered absolutely the most from a lack of balance, and it really truly does show whenever you consider things like psychic types existing. They have 2 counters built into the game with Ghost and Bug. The only problem is Bug Pokemon suck dick, and Ghost Pokemon in Gen 1 suck dick. That's the problem, you know? If my only answer to Alakazam is Pinsir, and I've got like a 0.01% chance of even finding a Pinsir in the Safari Zone, if that is my only real, truly hard counter to Psychic types, there's a problem. Because Ghost types are supposed to be immune, but Gengar, Ghastly, and Haunter, that's the order that I said them for some reason, also have the Poison typing, meaning that they can still be affected by Psychics. I don't know. Normals were also a little absurd, especially with like Snorlax, Persian, Tauros. But I think if I'm selecting one singular Pokemon that is just bad in all respects when it comes to gameplay, it's going to be ONIX. Now, why is that? Why is ONIX my pick? For one, despite being one of the most iconic Pokemon from the franchise, it has a base stat total of 385. So for reference, the base stat total for most second stage evolutions is over 400. Meaning that this 28-foot rock snake that weighs 500 pounds with skin harder than diamond, or with body harder than diamond, who can burrow through the ground at 50 miles per hour, it's weaker than War Turtle. And I don't just mean weaker as in, War Turtle can beat it, because, type advantage. I also mean physically. Like, War Turtle is stronger physically than ONIX. I genuinely don't really know what they were thinking when giving ONIX its base stat total. At first, I thought maybe it was the special split. Maybe it had an incredibly high special defense stat as well, but it didn't. It did not. Special didn't split that way. It split into special attack and special defense, not special defense and regular defense. So ONIX has never been good. Not once. ONIX has never even received a buff. Like, yeah, it was given an evolution in the next generation with Steelix, and it could be argued that Steelix was already planned, but like, ONIX is just bad. You got me. And as far as most forgettable goes, I wanted it to be Porygon. I really did. Porygon was the first one I thought of, but that's exactly how I knew that it was a bad pick. Porygon at least had its time to shine, so to speak, whenever it came to the controversy with that episode that caused all the kids to have seizures. And so everybody kind of knew who or what Porygon was, even if you never got one. Because I promise you did not. The only way to obtain a Porygon other than trading was to gamble in the game corner, in these slots. And you had to get an absurd amount of these tokens and then spend them on Porygon, when you could just get a Dratini or an Abra, which are both better options, especially the Dratini. Porygon's also a bad Pokemon too, and that does not help, at least in this generation. But I think the most forgettable Pokemon in all of Gen 1 is Tangela. Quick, show of hands, how many people in Gen 1 had a Tangela in their party? Okay, now put your fucking hand down. I can't see you. This is a recording. No one had a Tangela. Like, not me, not you, not Jesus. No one had a Tangela on their Pokemon Red party. You could only catch it in the smallest little bundle of grass you've ever seen in your life right before you reach Cinnabar Island. You can also trade it there for a Venonat, which, makes it easier to obtain. However, there are so many better options for a grass-type Pokemon that why would you use Tangela? Especially because it is mediocre at best. And then in the Pokedex entries it mentions that its skin is its hair is seaweed-like, which they never do anything with. I think that's supposed to work as almost a hint for you to search near the ocean, like grass that's near the water. But there's more than just that one patch that's right there near the water, so I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking with Tangela, but definitely the most forgettable of all of the Pokemon in Gen 1. Alright, Let's move on to Johto. I say it like that. Johto. Gen 2 was the first generation that I can explicitly remember actually being there on launch, on release. I got Pokemon Crystal the day it came out. Maybe I didn't. Maybe it was Christmas that year. It felt like the day it came out. To this day, Heart Gold and Soul Silver, which are the Gen 4 remakes of Gen 2, are my favorite of all of the Pokemon games. There's just so much to do going between Johto and Kanto, and being able to see how things in another region have changed since you left in the previous game, as well as actually being able to fight the protagonist from the last game. It's incredible. It's great stuff. The Pokemon weren't, though. We're going to talk about the worst of them. So, worst design, first of all. I thought about this one for a while, because they're really, in terms of design, aren't that many bad picks in Gen 2. I don't really like Togetic that much, and that's just mostly because I've got too many questions about it. Like, how did it incorporate the eggshell into its biology? Is the egg made of something other than the rest of the egg that Togepi hatched out of? What is Togepi? Would it have evolved into something different if it had gotten out of its egg all the way? So many questions, so little answers, and it also kind of looks like it's made of Charleston Chew. I don't know how to explain that. It's just the vibe I get. But I think the worst design Pokemon in all of Gen 2 is Quillfish. I know, I'm a fish hater. I don't like fish. But Quillfish started kind of a trend, too, of single evolution water-type Pokemon that are mediocre at best and provide decent experience whenever you beat them. It's something to fill the waters with, especially considering in the next generation, they're gonna need that. But Quillfish, again, vacant expression, stupid face, nothing about him stands out. There isn't a single thing about Quillfish that makes me go, I want to use him. I'm spinning. Why am I spinning? Like, it can use Pin Missile. That's literally the most noteworthy thing about Quillfish, and that's pathetic. I got nothing else, really. If there's a big Quillfish fan out there, and I know Overquill came out recently, and other than the name, it looks fucking stupid as hell. It's just a bad Pokemon. So as far as the worst gameplay goes, I wanted to avoid the ones that everybody knew. What I mean by that is, we're not talking about Sunkern, we're not talking about Sunflora. I'll mention them right here. They suck. They're terrible. Lowest base stat total in the game, grass Pokemon, and you gotta waste a Sunstone on Sunkern to get Sunflora. Also, there's Unknown, and the rigmarole that you have to go through in order to obtain Unknown. The worst in terms of gameplay, though, gotta be Sudowoodo. Sudowoodo? He's sort of wood. He acts like a tree, but he's actually a rock. He's an obstacle Pokemon. Much like Snorlax in the previous generation, Sudowoodo served as a way to block us off from reaching different areas until we had an item that can be used to move him, to agitate him, and to annoy him. And then he attacks us. Not only will he attack you, but he'll run the fuck away, too. And so it becomes this game of, okay, there's a limited number of Sudowoodo in the game. I can only catch one. I only need to catch one. But then whenever I catch him, he's not good. Again, base stat total of 410? Are you kidding me? That's dumb. If he's gonna be in the way like that, I should at least be able to think for a second that my mid-level starter Pokemon couldn't just push him out of the way. Maybe I just don't like rock Pokemon either. That's not true. I love Golem. Golem's my boy. He's rock ground. He's not pure rock, but neither is Onix. So, and maybe being forgettable is part of Sudowoodo's charm, part of his intention, because he is trying to camouflage. He's trying to stay hidden. But that doesn't make him good. That doesn't make it any better. That just means that I don't like him. Oh my god. The only reason people remember Sudowoodo, or the only people most forgettable, I debated giving to Deliberate. Deliberate has fans, me being one of them. Hang on. Deliberate has fans. I'm probably 3 of them, to be perfectly honest. But I've always liked Deliberate, at least a little bit. But man, there's nothing for this fucking Pokemon. At least, not until very recently, and even that's a completely separate Pokemon that's not technically related to Deliberate at all. But the most exciting thing that's happened to this little boy since his inception was the like, realization that his name was not Delibird. Oh no, he fell. His name is not Delibird. It's delivered, because he's delivering packages. Look at that. Look at his sack. There, it's part of his biology. Anyway, this isn't even the Pokemon. This isn't even the most forgettable in Gen 2. Most forgettable in Gen 2 is fucking Stantler. Unless you're Dan Avidan, you don't like Stantler. Stantler's a deer. He's a deer who is slightly weird. It's kind of a theme that usually the worst Pokemon are those that are mediocre single evolution Pokemon that don't have anything that make them stand out. That's a lot of reasons to not like a Pokemon, just right there. And there's a surprising number of Pokemon that fit that description. Stantler just happens to be one of the most boring. He's also a normal type. I think he's got a couple of psychic type moves that he can use because, I don't know, mind magic. But it's never really made him, on his own, stand out. I think maybe if Stan had a better design on his antlers, like more than just a little ball right there, or if his eyes were a little more expressive, less actually animal-like, I might like him more. But I don't. So he's the most forgettable. Gen 3! Gen 3 was where I really felt like Pokemon came into its own. This is where Pokemon started to flourish as a game and not just as a franchise. The physical special split was one of the best things to ever happen to the game and its balance, as well as the fact that the game itself actually had more of a unique identity. Yes, too much water, 7.1 out of 10, it's very funny, but Hoenn was different. And not only was it different, it was good. Can't be said for all the Pokemon in Gen 3, though. Worst designed is pretty obvious to me, and I'm gonna let you guess which one it is. But Volbeat and Illumise are, contenders. Mostly because who wanted them? Who looked at them and went, man, I want that. That's my favorite Pokemon right there. Whose favorite Pokemon is fucking Illumise? No one's. Not mine, not yours, no one. You have this strange little bug who looks vaguely human, which is a little weird on its own, but it's also a duo Pokemon, meaning you have to catch it and its partner in order for you to have the complete set, which means it's also going to be split between versions. It also has no evolutions and no unique moves. Why would I use it? It's a bug. Bugs are statistically always the worst. You get it. You get what I'm saying. You get what I'm putting down. You're picking it up, right? Yeah, I think so. Let's move on to the actual worst Pokemon design, which is Castform. I know this one's been memed to death. This one has been talked about into the ground, and there's really nothing that I can add that would actually change anyone's real viewpoint on Castform. Either you like him or you don't. For me, I was 8 years old. I was playing Pokemon Ruby at my after school. Wow, that's neat. Oh, look, there's this base where Team Magma's taken over this weather station for some reason. Oh, there's a Pokemon at the end that I get a reward? That I get as a reward? Okay, alright, cool, I'll take it. Let's find it. What is it? Oh, those are titties. That is a head with titties. As a 7 or 8 year old, however old I was, I looked at this thing and went, that is a head with titties. And I thought, you know, maybe seeing an emotion would change how the little bottom of it is. But no, that's just what it looks like. It doesn't move around like a cloud like I feel like it should. It just sits there, like some titties. I'm immature, I recognize this. But man, what were they thinking, you know? No one looked at that and went, maybe we should give him a bra. Nobody did. So for worst gameplay, I've got to throw a special honorable mention out for Shedinja. I know I've had honorable mentions in every other, category up until this point, but Shedinja is special for a couple of reasons. For one, statistically, it is the worst. It is objectively one of the worst because it can only have 1 HP. That's it. And Wonder Guard has its protection. It has the most gimmicky gimmick to ever gimmick. But also, Shedinja's weird to obtain. Because in Gen 3, what you have to do is level up Nincada all the way up to the point where it evolves into Ninjask. Ninjask will then split after its evolution and give you a Shedinja if you have an open spot in your party and if you have a Pokeball available. I don't know about you, but I always play with a full party. Always, without fail. If I've got 6 Pokemon that I have caught, they are all sitting with me and I am training all of them. Don't ask me why, it's just what I do. I like the grind of JRPGs, I guess. But that means that I missed out on Shedinja, for a while, until I got the Pokedex, like the physical, like, book Pokedex that told you how to get everything and do everything. I didn't know. Shedinja is great, don't get me wrong. It's a fun gimmick now, but at the time it just kind of pissed me off. But Feebas wins. And anybody who played Gen 3 and tried to get a Feebas knows exactly why. For one, evolving it's kind of bullshit. You have to max out its beauty score and compete in contests. It's monotonous. It's a little grindy. It's a little boring. I didn't mind it personally that much, but I also understand why people would. Catching Feebas, on the other hand, that's another story. Do you know how many, like, tiles are in the game? I don't either, but it's probably several 100,000, or at least several thousand. Feebas can be caught in exactly 6 tiles in the entire game. These 6 tiles are water tiles that all exist on one route, on one singular route, and you have to fish to catch Feebas. So you have to get very, very lucky, or you gotta look online, and you gotta dig. You gotta figure it out. It's also not a guarantee either. If it was that these particular tiles were, you know, guaranteed to have a Feebas if you threw your rod in them, that'd be fine. I could get that. That'd be alright. They're not. It's like a 0.5% chance. It's like they didn't want you to find Feebas. Is it Feebas? I'm gonna say Feebas still. It might be Phoebus. I don't like Phoebus. Feebas it is. And for most forgotten, honorable mention goes to Plusle and Minun for being Pikachu clones. They were the first of the Pikachu clones, if you don't count Pichu. Which I don't, because that is literally a pre-evolution of Pikachu. But Plusle and Minun were designed for double battles. They were a gimmick on top of a gimmick. They were a Pikachu clone, and made specifically for double battles. But they couldn't evolve, and they had a terrible move pool and a terrible set of abilities. Because their abilities only worked with each other. And they were meant to show off the double battles, because double battles were introduced in Gen 3. But, like, how many double battles are there in Gen 3? Maybe, like, 12? Maybe? There aren't many. There really are not. And so you don't even really get the chance to use Plusle and Minun that often. But most forgettable, we gotta run down the list of the reasons why. Mediocre stats, single evolution Pokemon, with absolutely zero support since its release, is a grass type, and can only be caught in one specific area. That's right, we're talking about Tropius. I fucked with Tropius as a kid. I wanted to like Tropius so bad. Because, I mean, it looks like a dinosaur who can fly. How cool is that? Not like a pterosaur or anything. I mean like a brachiosaurus sprouting wings and soaring through the air like a majestic angel or butterfly. But Tropius doesn't do anything. Tropius is just there. I'm questioning all of my Pokemon pronunciations today, by the way. Is it Tropius? Tropius? Might be Tropius, actually. I don't see Tropius shown anywhere. I don't see Tropius used in advertising material. I don't see Tropius. And if Game Freak's forgotten about him, odds are there's a reason. And that's because everybody else has forgotten about him, too. Oh, and really quickly before we begin, I mentioned that the physical special split was in Gen 3 in my previous video. My bad. I was wrong on that one. The physical special split happened on Gen 4. That's my bad. I don't know what I was thinking, but it was not correct, so I'm gonna apologize for that here and now. You know, I wasn't really a fan of the Gen 4 games, which may be a controversial thing to say, but I feel like Gen 4 is where I lost interest just as a person. Like, it was nothing against Gen 4, it's just one of those that's not nostalgic for me in particular, because I was out of Pokemon. I was a cool teenager at this point, I wasn't gonna be playing Pokemon. Be that as it may, Gen 4 has some pretty good Pokemon designs overall. Really, the worst I can say about most of them is that they're pretty lazy. Kind of the exemplar of this is Weasel and Floatzel, where they took the Gen 1 approach and just went, let's take this Pokemon who's existing in this space right here, and let's make him a little bigger and a little angrier. And that's the evolution. That's it. Our work is done. We're wizards. I kind of didn't talk about that at all in Gen 1, but yeah, that's really strong in Gen 1. Yeah, at the same time, most of the designs still work well enough that it doesn't bother me, but by the time we get to Gen 4, Pokemon are becoming more complex in their designs for the most part, and it feels a little odd just to have an evolution be bigger thing. I'm splitting hairs here because honestly, Gen 5's mostly got some pretty stellar designs. The only one I can really genuinely pick at is Wormadam. It's boring, it's a bug, like it's a weak bug too, it's not even a good bug. It's got some various, like, forms it can be, which is fun, I guess. I get that it's like a Madam too, but it just sits there, man. Like, Metapod and Kakuna at least had little, like, personalities. This thing, Wormadam, looks like it oh my god, Percy, relax. It's not going anywhere. Oh my god, what was I saying? Wormadam sucks. Now, where the designs were good, the gameplay was where I kind of didn't really vibe with Gen 4 once I did go back to it. It was slow, you know? It was a bit of a slower game. Everything felt like it took longer. I'm talking about that because we're in the gameplay section, and I'm padding. But, Gen 4 introduced a lot of meta staples, like things that are still used off and on now. And I think the best example of this is Rotom, who I hate. So I've got him here in the worst gameplay section. Rotom, especially when is it Rotom? I'm gonna say Rotom, but I think it might be Rotom. But Rotom, now I sound like a crazy person in my own head, has been a meta mainstay, specifically in the Wash form. I think that's right. But Wash Basin Thomas has kind of just been a pain in the ass. I don't know the reasonings exactly. I'm not a competitive guru. I just know Rotom sucks to deal with. Rotom feels right. Rotom feels natural. I'm sorry to everybody who had to hear me say Rotom. There's not even really a competitor for me. It's Mayocombi. Why? Well, interesting story. I was playing Gen, like, 7 or maybe Gen 8. I don't really remember, but I caught a Combi. And I was just like, hell yeah, I'm gonna get a Vespiquen. I'm gonna have a good bug on my team for the first time in a long time. And then it just didn't evolve. I kept going further and it kept not evolving. I got it to level like 40. And I'm just like, this isn't right. This is not correct. That was probably whenever I learned that, like, gender differences were starting to be a bigger thing in Pokemon. Because I didn't see the little dot that's supposed to be there. And therefore I'm stuck with a Combi, who is statistically the worst ever, other than Sunkern, I think. That's probably not accurate, but I think it's close. I think Mayocombi is up there as one of the worst, especially because it also has the bug typing. This one comes from a place of, like, personal hate and, like despair, but it feels like something that probably happened to other people as well. Definitely, if you were playing this at the age you were intended to play it, like if this was 10 and under kind of category, I can't imagine how many 10-year-olds had a Mayocombi until he was level 99, you know? Most Forgotten has the distinction of being the ones that are remembered the most as boring Pokemon. Ironically, which is Finneon and Lumineon. Everyone's talked about these two. They are just fish. I know I mentioned Seaking in the last video being just an ugly fish, but at least it was ugly. Like, at least it had something to make you go, oh yeah, no, I remember that. That's a Seaking. With these, you're just like, I could buy those at a tropical pet store. I could go to Walmart and probably find something that looked close enough to these that nobody could really tell the difference if it was inside of a Pokeball. But these have been talked about to death. Everybody knows these. Everybody knows them at this point, which means they're not the most forgotten. On the other hand, we have Chatot, and he exists for having the gimmick of the move Chatter. What does Chatter do? What does Chatter mean? Chatter means that you scream into your DS's microphone in public, most likely, and do it as loud as you can, and it becomes a more powerful attack. Or you do what I did and just, like, blow air directly into the microphone. It worked just the same. What's Chatot done ever? You know, I'm sure in the anime there's a pirate that has Chatot on its shoulder or something like that. But it's such a mediocre Pokemon, especially considering we can't even really use its main gimmick anymore. The Pokemon games have been on the Switch for not 3 generations, but 2 generations at this point. There's not a microphone built into the Switch, so Chatter is now just like a move, I think. But yeah, Chatot's just a parrot. A parrot with a gimmick which I don't even think works anymore. It has no evolutions. It has no significance in any of the plots in any of the games. And it just... You know, like, you got me. Oh my god. Gen 5. Oh, that probably fucked up my camera. These things are supposed to be white lights. These LEDs are old and busted. Oh, I love Gen 5. Gen 5 is my favorite generation of Pokemon. It reintroduced me to the series, and I think it introduced a lot of people to the series as well, which is what it was intended to do. Gen 5 also had the distinction of having the first Pokemon that could move constantly in battle versus just playing like a little animation whenever they first show up. Speaking of, I was really disappointed whenever we went from Crystal to Ruby, and Ruby didn't have them moving around, but then they fixed that in Emerald. So anyway, that's not the point of this. Unova's great. However, it's got some fucking bad Pokemon, man. We can't talk about worst design or worst Pokemon in general without mentioning the elemental monkeys, Simisage, Simipour, and Simisear. They're just bad. They're lazy, they're boring, they are ugly on top of all of those things. They were meant as almost like a pseudo starter to give you an advantage against your rival, I guess, but they're mediocre Pokemon who have a mediocre move pool, who do mediocre things while looking like fucking trash, man. And speaking of that, there's Garbodor, whose name is literally Garbage Odor. Not really sure they took this one too seriously, but it's been also memed to death. Everybody knows about this one. Even if you don't play Pokemon, you're just like, oh, ain't that game that got them trash things? Them monsters that are made of garbage? Is that it? Is that Pokemon? Yeah, it is. Thanks, Gen 5. Thank you. But I think Watchog is the worst looking Pokemon in all of Gen 5. Another early game rat that you have to level up to get to its mediocre next form before you dump into your box forever. That is Watchog's purpose. He looks like he's on meth, and I don't appreciate it. There's something weirdly intense about the way he just, like, stares at me. And he's got, like, a built-in high-res, like, visibility vest. And I get it, he's like a watchhog, like he's watching somebody. But it's so just unnerving seeing this thing stare at you for hours. Because you will stare at Watchog for hours. You will see him everywhere. You will be walking down the street on Cinnabar Island that you're at somehow from Unova, and a Watchog will pop out of the ground with a... I lost that story. The point is he's after you, and he's gonna get you, and I ain't gonna get got. If we're talking about, like, bad gameplay decisions in Gen 5, I think the prevalence of very high-level Evos is the most frustrating for most people. Hydreigon is the most notorious example, but it also exists throughout a lot of them, including Braviary, who only has one evolution. Same with Mandibuzz, its duo. And that was likely because they expected people to keep playing past beating the Elite Four, who only had like a level 40-something team. But it makes it frustrating when you have a level 48 Pokemon who's still its first form. You still can't compete with everybody else. You have to XP share that thing. That's difficult. It's not really difficult. As far as individual Pokemon go, Archeops is a contender for me, because it's a trap Pokemon, and I don't mean that in a fun way. Archeops is the definition of a glass cannon, so it can kind of trap people into thinking it's better than it is. You use Archeops throughout the, like, main game, throughout the story of Pokemon, you're gonna have really no problems with anything. You're not gonna run into any difficult challenges, you're just gonna one-shot everything. As soon as you take that motherfucker online, you're gonna get bodied. I may be speaking from experience, but, like, you will 100% be stomped into the dirt using an Archeops. Defeatist is amazing at how much of the worst ability it is. But I think the worst in terms of gameplay, for me, and I don't know if this is an actual, like, opinion people have, but for me, the worst in all of my gameplay time with Gen 5 was Audino. Because Audino is a white mage, and white mages only work when you have a party. Which you do, you have rotation battles and stuff that you can experience, and triple battles, whoa! Those don't happen. They happen to show it off. They happen to let you remember that it exists here and there, but it doesn't matter. And you can't really play the game with an Audino without incredibly specializing it. You can't just go, Audino, win on your own, it's up to you. Can't do that. It's not feasible, it's not likely, and it's not going to be possible. At least Chansey could tank a couple of hits. Audino can too, but like nowhere near as effectively. I was excited to see an Audino appear though, whenever it did appear, because it's worth a lot of experience. It's helpful even in death, you know? So back to the sheer number of Pokemon that were added with Gen 5. It was meant to be an entirely new Pokedex. This was the most Pokemon that I think had ever been added for a new game. So of course you're going to have some forgettable designs. Ducklet and Swanna stand out to me a little bit, because they're just cartoon birds, you know? Nothing about them feels like a Pokemon. Swanna almost is there with its eyes. He just looks so generic, is my problem with him. And also, how is Ducklet a duck when Psyduck is also a duck? I know these are Pokemon, but I feel like there should be more in common with them than just their bills. But, I want you to picture a Pokemon in your head for me. Let's play a little game. I want you to think of Unfezant. It's the bird Pokemon that you can catch the first form at the beginning of the game, just like every other game, and you can get it to like level 36, and it evolves into the third form. Now picture it in your head. Pictured this one, didn't you? What about this one? Yeah, female Unfezant got shafted here. She looks like she left the house without her wig on, you know? Like, he's the most majestic boy at the ball. Anyway, getting off topic. Female Unfezant is bad. I really wish it wasn't, because I like the male. The male's pretty, and I like that it's based in science, where females typically have the darker plumage, males typically have the bright, vibrant plumage in order to attract a mate. I get that. That's pretty neat, but it makes for a boring Pokemon. Gen 5 was very, very refreshing overall. I think it breathed a lot of necessary life into Pokemon by this point. Again, maybe this was just me burning out in Gen 4 because I had binged it so much, but Gen 5 felt really special once I was playing it. Now we gotta talk about Gen 6. Again, these lights are supposed to be like pink. Pokemon X and Y were the first Pokemon games that I bought on launch. Like, I bought with my money. Like, I had a job whenever I got X and Y. I got Y, though, because I'm an edgy emo boy at heart, and Yveltal is really cool and badass. This was also where the Fairy type was introduced, which I can't believe we didn't have before this. We need new types, honestly. Like, we need additional typage within the next game. I really hope they shake things up, like, tremendously in the next game. As far as design goes, though, can't move past this category without talking about Klefki. It is just keys. I can't really add anything to this conversation that hasn't already been said 150 times by much more eloquent people than I am. But Klefki is just a jumble of keys. It doesn't even really look like a real jumble of keys. It looks like toy keys, like toddler keys. Keys that a baby would play with. I get that there have always been thing-type Pokemon, like Magnemite or Voltorb, but it's just keys. I also don't like Aromatisse. Aromatisse? I don't like it. Not sure what it's supposed to be. The internet doesn't really know either. But Slurpuff wins for me. I understand if you think Slurpuff's cute. I do actually understand why you would think this. But to me, it looks like it's in pain. Like, it looks like it's suffering. Like somebody stomped on something that was once very cute and very adorable and turned it into this. I don't know why I think this. It's fairly well proportioned. Its face just makes me think it's in misery. I can't really appropriately justify this one, I don't think. I don't believe many people are on the same boat that I am whenever it comes to this. But Slurpuff feels like somebody's been stepping on his head for a little too long, and I don't like the vibe that gives me. The Ice type was surprisingly heavily used in Gen 6, and so we got some brand new Ice type Pokemon, but it also made it very, very clear very, very quickly that Game Freak did not understand the problem with Ice types. I know this because Avalugg exists and Aurorus exists. So Avalugg's a problem because it's pure ice and a physical wall. But as soon as you hit this boy with any special moves whatsoever, it is down for the count. There is nothing it can do against a flamethrower or another flamethrower. It's also slower than Sin. It couldn't keep up with me if I was drunken on my ass, you know? Like, I could booty scoot faster than this thing could chase me. And Aurorus is special because it is an ice type. It's also a rock type, meaning it has a 4 times weakness to fighting, which is not good because there are a ton of fighting moves utilized by a ton of different Pokemon. And Aurorus just gets beaten by him. Like, if you low kick Aurorus, that thing's kneecaps are gone for the rest of its life. It's never recovering. You're gonna need a wheelchair. But Aegislash is the worst in all of Gen 6. They should not have let Aegislash off of the cutting room floor. Let's run through the list of problems with Aegislash. Unbalanced typing with Ghost and Steel, which has a ton of defenses and an immunity. 2 immunities. It's busted stat line. We'll get there. It doesn't seem busted on its own, but 150 in attack and special attack means it's clearly a mixed attacker, and then whenever it changes forms, which is the other problem, its defenses become 150s. That's a huge amount of attack and defense to work through, especially when it has a unique priority move that lowers the attacking Pokemon's attack by 1 stage, and also changes its form. That's nuts. That's bananas. That's bonkers. Absolutely busted, especially for it to not be a legendary. It just is a Pokemon that's out there in the world. This thing could kill God, and probably has in the competitive scene at least once or twice. Denny's is probably the most forgettable Pokemon, who is also a Pikachu clone. Because they tried really, really hard to clone Pikachu here, and he just looks like electric rat available at Kmart. They've even used him in advertising material, but every single time I've ever seen Denny's anywhere, I'm just like, ew, another one? No, it's not Pikachu. They've tried to capture that lightning in a bottle a million times since Pikachu's been released, but they're not going to do it, because clearly they're trying too hard. Just make something with passion. That's all you gotta do. Carbink is memorable, but only because it gets eaten by Sableye. I had to mention that here because I think being memorable for being a victim of cannibalism is probably not a good reason to be memorable. I would rather not be known as somebody who was eaten alive. But without a doubt in my mind, without a shadow of a flicker of a maybe in my soul, Furfrou is the worst in terms of forgettability, because it's just a poodle. You can give it any hairstyle you want. You can cut its hair however you want to do it. You can dye its hair if you want to. It's just a poodle. And it's everywhere, too. I am oversaturated. I am oversaturated by Furfrou whenever I'm playing Gen 6. They are everywhere. They are among us, if you will. I could get a poodle and cut its hair all cool and dye its fur a color. Like, that's something I can do in reality. And then I can make it bite you. Apparently. I think Gen 7 has, so far, been the best Pokemon game that's existed in 3D. And what I mean is Pokemon's X and Y, Pokemon, whichever this one is, Pokemon Sword and Shield, Scarlet and Violet, all of those, when compared to Sun and Moon, are worse. The only problem with it is the 2-hour tutorial at the beginning of the game. It's exhausting. It's like the entire first island is tutorial. Worse design could have gone to a lot of Pokemon in Gen 7. And really, I do think you can probably guess the winner of this category for me, but we're gonna dunk on Gumshoes for a second first. Because he looks like that. He genuinely looks like a Trump badger or a Trump weasel, and I don't want that. I don't think anybody wanted that. I'm gonna put Bruxish on here as well. I like its psychedelic design. It's actually pretty interesting whenever you stop looking at its face, but it's really hard to stop looking at its face. Plus, Bruxism is the act of grinding your teeth together, just like for some reason, and I don't like to think of the fact that this fish, this psychedelic fish, is swimming through the ocean, grinding its teeth. I'm gonna talk about Comfy a little bit, because I don't think anybody ever has. It's just Klefki, but with flowers instead. Like, it's a wreath of flowers. Like, I think these were made with a similar design intent. And truly, if you wanted to make the Pokemon like this little teeny tiny object within the center of either Klefki or Comfy, you could say that being the Pokemon, the rest being the body, that could be regional forms. That'd be neat. But they didn't do that, so it's a bad design. It looks like a thing, like an object. Crabominable is, by and large, the worst looking Pokemon in Gen 7, though. And there's a few reasons for this. Not just that he's ugly. He is ugly. He's atrocious. He also just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, Crabrawler exists as a punching crab. He just punches things. He's like, bam! Okay, that's fine. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but where are you going with that? There are, like, mantis shrimp that exist. They punch things. Maybe this is like a crab version, and now he's a Yeti crab. I don't get that. No one thinks he's cute. No one wants to think he's cute. No one wants to find a reason to put him in their party. It's a bad design. I kind of imagine he sounds like the Tasmanian devil, too, but, like slowed down a little bit. I know he's got to say his name in the anime, but that doesn't apply to the game. So for worst gameplay, I do want to talk about the general drop in just speed of new Pokemon. Most of the Pokemon in Gen 7 are slow as, like, fucking bricks, dude. I couldn't think of anything that was slow, I'm sorry. But most of the new Pokemon introduced in Gen 7 are slow as hell. They tend to have, like, under 70 speed, even when fully evolved. For certain Pokemon, it makes sense. Like, Mudsdale, I mean, yeah, he is a draft horse. He should be fast, but this is, like, magical creature fast, not, like, actual horse fast. But also, Vikavolt literally has entries in his Pokedex about how fast he can move. And instead, we get, like, 40 base speed. It's slow. It's slower than sand on shit, you know? It's not going anywhere. It is stuck. Also, another honorable mention goes to Male Salandit. Salandit. Male Salandit. But honorable mention goes to Male Salandit. He does the same thing that Male Combee does, but is more infuriating, because there's no gender difference. There is not a gender difference that you are capable of seeing if you look at the male and the female. But for me personally, Wishy-Washy wins. Wishy-Washy wins because Wishy-Washy is a trap Pokemon in the same way that Archeops was. It tricks you in a way, because the ability for Wishy-Washy, schooling, whatever it is, seems very strong on paper. Its stats explode, but it doesn't get any faster, and it has no additional health. It's got additional defenses, but no additional health. And once it's below a certain health threshold, it's dead. Like, it goes to regular Wishy-Washy, and you lose. The part that confuses me the most is that this is essentially an evolution for Wishy-Washy, but they didn't want to make it a full evolution. I think they just wanted to experiment with what a Pokemon ability could do, and what was good and what was bad. But this was definitely a step in the wrong direction. If it had just been a normal evolution for the Pokemon, that would have been fine. That would have worked for it. But instead, we have this half-assed form system that goes away if it takes too much damage, can only be accessed at a certain level, and doesn't address all the issues that Wishy-Washy has. So if you've played Pokemon Sun and Moon, or Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, whichever one that you picked up and played, and you had a team, I want you to go through that team. All 6 Pokemon in your head. Now, if you had a Ranguru or Passimian on your team, I would love for you to comment, because you are wrong. These are some of the most forgettable Pokemon in Gen 7 to me. They're not number 1, but they're also just, they don't do anything interesting when compared to other Pokemon. There's no reason to use them, and they're just kind of bland, no evolution duos at a point when that's not fun anymore. That's not interesting anymore. Give me something else. I'm willing to bet money that a large number of people forget Dhelmise exists. Not only that, I would be willing to bet money that lots of people forget that Dhelmise is not the anchor. Dhelmise is the seaweed. Who in their Pokemon playthrough used Dhelmise? Who remembers seeing a Dhelmise? I don't know why this Pokemon was forgotten, because I love it. I love to look at it. I love to see it. But it's not one that anyone ever mentions, and I forget it exists most of the time. I see it and I go, wow, I love Dhelmise! And then it scrolls past while I'm going through Bulbapedia, and then I forget it exists again. Its design just doesn't stick with me, and I think it is just because it's an anchor. But it's got good typing, it's got good stats, it's just not noteworthy in any way. Oh, I didn't change the color for Gen 7. Boo. Boo me. But that's it, that's all of Gen 7. So we're gonna go on to Galar. Ah, yes, the PP color. I did not play Gen 8 on launch. Gen 8 is the first generation of Pokemon that I waited for a little while. I wasn't the type of person to be like, oh, look at that low-resolution tree! Boo! I don't care. There's going to be problems at launch. There's going to be issues with the game. They were creating a different kind of Pokemon game. They were creating a game that they had never tried to do before on a system that they had not worked on before. People also threw up a huge stink about the fact that not all of the Pokemon are going to be in the game, despite the fact that not fucking one of you have completed a Pokemon game by filling the Pokedex out in the last 15 years. Not a one! If you have, though, go you. Fucking ugh. But the Pokedex is necessarily reduced. It was good. It was fine. Not all the Pokemon were, though. Of course, you have examples like the fossils, whose names I don't remember, but there's 4 of them. One of which I do know, and we'll talk about him later. But the fossils are ugly. They're bad. They're not correctly put together. They are misassembled, essentially. And so, therefore, they look incorrect. I think that's funny. I especially think that it's funny because it's a jab at, like, British paleontologists who were just slapping together dinosaur bones that look like they fit. It's neat. I appreciate it. However, that doesn't make them less ugly. It just gives a purpose for it, which is still better than nothing. Berserker gets an honorable mention because they cannot figure out how to make, like, a regional Meowth variant. He looks like he's got crumbs in his beard. Like, he looks like Sticky Beard from Codename Kids Next Door. How many people are going to get that reference? I don't know. He doesn't look soft. He doesn't look fun. He doesn't look like somebody I'd like to have around. He looks like he smells. Like there's an odor permeating from his beard that just... I meant to say emanating. Whatever. He stinks. But, the winner has to be Pinchurchin. Pinchurchin? Pinch Urchin. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. Pinchurchin is the worst. Literally directly stole Snom's face and slapped it on a Pyukumuku clone. I also don't like it because I don't want to step on it, and I don't want to have a pet that that looks like that. But what really baffles me here is that Pyukumuku was just introduced, like, the previous season. The previous generation. They just loved the concept of this weird little fucking thing that you could step on and it would hurt a lot. Like, they loved that concept so much they had to do it 2 generations in a row? Why? Who at Game Freak, whose thing is this? Who, like, do we need to have a talk? Do we need to have a conversation? Because if this is your thing, you need to quit it. You need to drop it. You need to let it go. For worst gameplay, we're going to bring back the fossils for a second, because I want to talk about Dracovish. I want to talk about Dracovish because Dracovish is likely the most, like, unfortunate combination of things to happen to a single Pokemon to make it busted. Because it is the one-move wonder. All you need is Fish's Rend, plus its ability Strong Jaw, plus its Stab, plus something else I don't remember. It makes the move have like a base power of like 480, which means that you don't need another strategy. It's obnoxious to play against, because if one gets going or gets rolling or is baton passed a Swords Dance or something like that, you're out of the game. There's nothing you can do, even if you resist both physical damage and water typing. But that's unfun game design. That's fun for somebody, typically. The person on the other end is usually having a great time, so can't be terrible gameplay. Brunerigus, though. Brunerigus is stupid. I forget but I don't remember the exact amount of HP that your Yamask will have had to have taken in order to actually begin the process of transforming into Gus. But you have to not only take a specific amount of damage, but you also have to go to a specific location on top of that. And that location doesn't, like, stand out. It's not glowing. It's not like the icy rock or anything. You just have to know to go there while your Yamask is low on HP and probably dying. It's so esoteric and so kind of just moronic that you can really tell that they intended for people to have access to the internet. They intended for people to know that this was a thing that existed and to be able to Google search it. Otherwise, there's no way anybody would have. Not a single fucking person would have done any of these things in order to obtain this Pokemon. For most forgotten, I think Boltund is a really great option, because you go from Yamper, who is arguably the most, or one of the most iconic designs in Gen 8. You take Yamper, and then you just turn him into a regular dog with, like, yellow on him. He's neat, yeah, I like him, but if I want an electric dog who's just like a dog, I'm gonna pick Manectric, and nobody's thought of him since he got a Mega Evolution last game. Like, no, not last game, game before that. Nobody's thought of Manectric. It's unfortunate, but it's true. But Boltund is just that, but worse, so why wouldn't I put him here? Indeedee also kind of weird. It's just like I don't understand the purpose of them. They're like little servants. I get that. It's like a house elf kind of situation, but I don't really know why we need that. There's nothing inspired about them. At least Esper and Meowstic from Gen 5 had to, like, hold back their psionic madness, or else they were going to incinerate the mailman. Indeedee's just there. But I gotta make a confession, because I'm a fake Pokemon fan, because I genuinely forgot this Pokemon existed before I was making this video, and that's Stonejourner. Stonejourner is Stonehenge the Pokemon, and I could not have told you this Pokemon was real before today. It's rocks and a face. That's the design. It's not a slow Pokemon either. It's faster than you'd think it would be. It's faster than most of Gen 7, as a matter of fact. But what does Stonejourner do? What does he do exactly? I can't think of a single instance he's mentioned in the anime. Granted, I don't watch the anime anymore, so maybe that's my problem. I can't think of a single instance he's used in the games where his presence was necessary or mattered. He's not an obstacle. He doesn't hide in the environment. He's just another Pokemon. What is his purpose? Why does he exist in the manner in which he does? You can't answer that, can you? Because I definitely couldn't. I'm not one that can. I do understand that it is just a Stonehenge reference, and that's as far as it could go. But I don't like that. That's not a satisfactory answer to me. So most forgotten it is. Honestly, I had a great time with Gen 8. I know a lot of people give it shit for being very linear and being kind of zone-focused. Gen 9 was the first true open-world Pokemon game, where Gen 8 ended up being, like, zone-focused. This one actually had interconnectivity. You could go to higher-level areas on accident if you meant to. Lots of things, lots of traditional hallmarks of an open-world RPG. It's also the game where it really becomes obvious, like, really becomes obvious that the teams, the evil teams, are not bad guys anymore. They are just another faction is all. But the teams kept ramping up with each generation. Gen 1, they were just criminals. Gen 2, they were still criminals, but they were criminalier. The point is now they're misunderstood students who may fail their finals. I should have probably talked about this with Team Skull, because Team Skull's where this really began. And I don't even actually remember Gen 8's team at all. I don't remember what they're called. The Palmy line sucks in Gen 9. This is Generation 9, and you're telling me that from stage 1 to 2, it stands up. And from 2 to 3, it gets a little bigger? Are you kidding me? Absolutely not. No. Take it back, put it back in the oven. It's not done. It's not a complete design. Like, at least with Poliwrath, you had Poliwag that you came from. This looks like it's going from literally just laying down to standing at its full height. That is the whole difference. I know there's like an actual, like, significant size difference, but just looking at it, you know? Wiglet and Wugtrio are also really bad. Just let Dugtrio die. Like, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with letting Dugtrio die? Who at Game Freak needs Dugtrio to be in the game? Who's there that requires this? Not me. I also don't work at Game Freak, so that's probably why it's not me. But worst design for me goes to Mousehold. Let me explain. You have 2 rats at the beginning. In stage 1, you have 2 rats. You fight with them, you level with them, you battle, you get stronger, you do everything that you normally do with Pokemon. And then they fuck. And now you have a little teeny tiny one. Or maybe 2 little teeny tiny ones if you're very lucky. That's not an evolution. That's literally not an evolution. That is the dumbest fucking design choice I've ever seen Game Freak make. And I understand that there are situations where similar things do happen. But if Wishy-Washy's form, like its schooled form, can't be an evolution, why can Mousehold having 1 additional member be an evolution? Why is that? Why does that qualify an evolution? Do these mice fight stronger to protect their children? Probably. But, it's not exciting. It's not interesting. It's not evolution. There were a decent amount of, like, relatively bad gameplay choices. The Paradox Pokemon is a great example. In theory, the Paradox Pokemon are really, really cool. Being able to see what Pokemon either used to look like or, like, robotic versions of them from the future do look like. Seeing those in the context of an actual Pokemon game we're playing is fun. It's neat. And then they all have the same base stat total, and they're all insanely powerful, and you just get sick of seeing them. And then you have ones like Fluttermane and Roaring Moon, which just suck, dude. Like, fuck these guys. They should have been, like, full Pokemon, like, with their own evolution lines. That would have made them better. But instead, we just get a bunch of beat sticks with daddy issues, I guess. I don't, why'd that come to mind? Scovillain, also, not good. It's the first fire-grass combination that we've ever had, and it makes a lot of sense for it to be based in Scovilles or to be based in Peppers in general. It's a mediocre single-stage Pokemon with a signature move that, like, helps the opponent for some reason. I don't know why. I don't get why this is the thing that it does, but it does do it. But this looks like a mid-stage of something. And it's not. It's the full thing. It's the total package. That's what you get. That's sad. That's sad. It's weak. It's garbage. I don't like it. But let me tell you, Gimmighoul is exhausting because you have to collect, I think, 999 Ghoul tokens in order to evolve it from Gimmighoul into Goldengo. And at least Goldengo is a good Pokemon. Don't misunderstand that. Goldengo is worth the wait, really. But oh my god, I'm so impatient for a Pokemon to evolve. I want it to be fully evolved as soon as possible so I can throw it in my box and I can get another one. And then evolve that one. It's a problem, probably. But Gimmighoul, you have to keep in your party forever in order for it to do its thing. Like, I'm sure they made it easier since I played it, but god, it's just so monotonous and so boring. It's just not fun gameplay-wise. Also, Goldengo does kind of also look like the cheese stick man. You know the one, like this guy, that guy, yeah. He kind of looks like that, doesn't he? Or like, maybe like Cinnamon from the Apple Jacks commercials. They should do a collab. I don't know what it would be about. There's some good forgettable ones here. In particular, I like to bitch about Squawkabilly, because Squawkabilly is the taxi service in this game. They're literally everywhere in this game, and I forgot about them. Maybe that's a me thing. Maybe I just tuned them out as, like, background noise. Maybe there's a big Squawkabilly fan club out there. I don't think there is. Do not think there is. I think it generally people just let them blend into the background and go, oh yeah, that's a Squawkabilly, alright. I'm gonna put Spidops here for a couple of reasons. Game Freak still doesn't know how to make a good bug. Yes, they do. They can make good bug-type Pokemon, but the early game Pokemon that are bug-type, that you're meant to, like, use right out the gate, first off, no one does. And second off, they're not good. Spidops also looks like a Roblox character, so I want you to take a second here. And I want you to really think hard on every Pokemon from Gen 9. Like, pause the video. Okay. Have you thought of all of the Pokemon in Gen 9? Every one of them. You have. Wow. It's very good. Very interesting. I wouldn't have believed that, especially because Rabsca exists. Who uses this? Who's out there as a Rabsca main? Who's evolving their little shit roller of a whatever he's called into Rabsca, and then using him as their number one good old boy guy? Psychic Bug is already a bad typing also. I don't know what about it is so cursed, but every bug psychic type or psychic bug type has floundered, which is sad because Rabsca is interesting. It's like a scarab, and within its little ball is a larva that is a model that is unrelated to its first form, meaning it's like a baby form. That is the Rabsca egg. But then if you breed it, it still just makes a regular egg. So are these just like are these just like party eggs that the Pokemon are giving us? Like, are they just fucking with us? Is this not how they all reproduce? Guess not. Learned that through Rabsca. And I can barely remember what he looks like. Again, could be a me thing. Don't think it is. Please remember to tell me what your picks for each generation are in the comments down below. And subscribe, please. But yeah, y'all have a great rest of your night. Y'all have a great rest.